Did he go mad before he died, or is there something more to this cursed ruin? A dry cough tore at Ilara's throat. The ailing widow, as the icy wind from the crumbling tower whipped at her rags. With her deceased husband's letter clutched to her chest, a final enigmatic command, she dragged herself through the collapsing corridors, each step a searing pain, each shadow an omen. Viva consumed her, and the echo of her own breath was her only companion in that forgotten place. But amidst the dust and ancient stones, there was a secret, a promise her life's love had left for her. And what she was about to discover would forever change not only her life, but the history of the entire kingdom. The weight of those final words, "would forever change," echoed in Ilara's clouded mind, mingling with the searing pain in her joints. She closed her eyes for an instant, the image of her beloved Lysander, even in his last days, still so vivid. His eyes, once full of mischievous sparkle and keen intelligence, now held an almost feverish seriousness as he dictated that strange will. "Trust me, my Ilara. Always trust," he had whispered, his voice weak but firm, before he departed. How could she doubt him now? The love that bound them was older than many of the tower's stones, and stronger than any illness that could consume her. With a sigh that seemed to tear the last vestige of air from her lungs, Ilara opened her eyes. The faint light filtering through the cracks in the crumbling walls revealed a scene of desolation. Cobwebs hung like grey shrouds, and the smell of mould and damp earth filled the air. She was in a small circular room, what seemed to have once been a chamber, perhaps a refuge. The only furniture was a crude wooden cot, covered by a thin straw mattress, and a small stone table, where an almost spent candle rested. Lysander had provided the bare minimum for her arrival, a gesture that, despite its precariousness, spoke of his care. Ilara's trembling hand slid over the cold stone wall, seeking support. Every movement was a monumental effort, but the thought of giving up, of surrendering to the fever and loneliness, was quickly pushed away by Lysander's voice in her memory. He would never give up, and she, his lifelong companion, would be no different. If there was a secret, a promise, she would find it. For him, for them. She began to explore, not with the haste of one seeking an obvious treasure, but with the reverence of one unraveling a legacy. Her wrinkled fingers traced the textures of the stones, feeling the irregularities, the marks of time. Her gaze, though blurred by illness, scrutinized every crack, every recess. The tower's silence was almost deafening, broken only by the rustle of her own rags and the occasional creak of old wood. As she passed through an archway leading to a darker corridor, Ilara felt a shiver that wasn't solely from the cold. It was a sense of something ancient, of stories etched into the very stones. She paused, hand on her chest, where Lysander's letter was still tucked, her eyes fixed on a spot on the wall, where a series of discrete carvings formed a pattern that seemed familiar, though she couldn't recall from where. They weren't mere marks of time. There was an intention there, a delicacy that contrasted with the ruin's brutality. The cough returned, stronger now, and Ilara bent over, her body trembling, but as she straightened, her gaze returned to the carvings. A small hope, a tenuous thread, began to weave itself in her heart. Lysander had always been a man of details, of hidden messages, of profound meanings. Could this be one of his? A first sign, an invitation to unravel the enigma? She touched the carvings with her fingertips, feeling the roughness of the stone, and a strange energy seemed to vibrate beneath her skin. The tower, once a mausoleum of her pain and despair, began to reveal itself as an ancient book, waiting to be read. Ilara's journey was just beginning, and with each touch, each careful and deep gaze, Lysander's presence seemed closer, more real, guiding her through the darkness. The strange energy Elara felt beneath her fingers was not electric nor mystical, but the vibration of a memory, a whisper from the past that seemed to emanate from the very stones. Her wrinkled fingers, thin from illness, traced the carvings with an almost reverent delicacy. They were not mere scribbles, but intricate symbols, laden with hidden meaning, a sequence of spirals and intertwining lines, forming what appeared to be a stylized constellation, or perhaps a celestial map. She closed her eyes for a moment, Lysander's image rising in her mind, a playful smile on his lips as he pored over ancient maps, deciphering enigmas others deemed impossible. Ah, how he loved a good mystery. A dry cough shook her again, and she leaned more firmly against the cold wall, her body protesting the effort. But the physical pain was overshadowed by the flame of curiosity Lysander had ignited in her. "You were always the one to see beyond the obvious, my flower," he used to say, and now, more than ever, she needed to honor those words. She opened her eyes, her vision still a little blurry, but her focus was unwavering on the carvings. With her fingertip, Elara followed a specific pattern, one that seemed to repeat with a slight variation. It was like a signature, a personal code only the two of them could unravel, a shared secret. She remembered a night, many years ago, when Lysander had taught her a guessing game using patterns on polished stones he had collected. He always believed that truth was hidden in small things, in details most ignored. Her gaze swept the wall, searching for something that stood out. The stones were ancient, worn, but there was a section just below the last carving in the sequence that seemed slightly smoother, as if it had been touched repeatedly over the centuries. Or perhaps, more recently, by Lysander. Elara reached out, her palm open, and gently pressed the surface. Nothing. She tried again, with a little more force, feeling the roughness of the stone against her skin. The tower's silence seemed to thicken, waiting, almost holding its breath with her. Suddenly, an almost inaudible click broke the stillness. It wasn't a loud sound, but a mechanical whisper, like an ancient gear shifting. Elara's heart leaped, and she felt a warmth spread through her chest, not from fever, but from an emotion she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Her eyes widened slightly, and she stepped back, watching the wall. Slowly, with a soft grind, a small section of the stone where the densest carvings were concentrated began to move inward. It wasn't a door, not yet, but a narrow, dark, inviting crevice that opened in the solid mass of the wall. The smell of damp earth and stale air, more intense now, escaped the opening, bringing with it the promise of something ancient and untouched. A faint but genuine smile appeared on Elara's pale lips. Lysander. He had done it. He had left a path, a beacon of light in her darkness. The weakness that plagued her seemed to diminish for an instant, replaced by a wave of determination. She was not alone. Lysander was still with her, guiding her, protecting her. The crevice in the wall was not just an opening, it was the confirmation of her faith, proof that their love transcended death. With a final breath, she approached the opening, ready to delve into the secrets her beloved had kept for her. The tower was no longer a tomb, but a portal to a new beginning. Elara hesitated for a brief instant. Her trembling hand extended into the darkness that opened before her. The air from the crevice was colder and denser, laden with the unmistakable scent of ancient earth and guarded secrets. A small flame of fear flickered in her chest, but it was quickly quelled by the determination Lysander had planted there. He wouldn't have brought her this far, only to abandon her. Not now. With a nod to herself, as if to dispel any lingering doubt, she took the first step into the unknown. The passage was narrow, barely allowing her to pass sideways, and the darkness was almost absolute. Elara's hand fumbled along the damp stone wall, seeking support as her feet advanced cautiously over an uneven floor, covered by a thin layer of dust and small debris. Each step was an act of faith, a surrender to the trust she placed in her Lysander. Her eyes, accustomed to the tower's gloom, strained to discern any shape or outline, but the absence of light was almost total. She felt her heart beat faster, not from panic, but from a growing anticipation. What did he want her to find here? The cough returned, a dry rasp that echoed in the confined passage, making her pause for a moment. She brought her hand to her chest, feeling the weakness that still consumed her, but the idea of retreating was unthinkable. Lysander had promised a treasure, not just of material wealth, but something that could heal her and rewrite destiny. That promise was her beacon in the darkness. As she advanced, Ilara noticed a subtle change in the air. It was no longer just the smell of earth, but a sweet, almost floral aroma mixed with something metallic and ancient. Her fingers continued to slide along the wall, and suddenly they touched something different. It wasn't cold stone, but a smooth, cold surface, like metal. Curious, she paused, feeling its shape. It was a small protrusion, a kind of lever or button embedded in the wall. With her heart pounding, Ilara pressed the protrusion. A soft click, almost inaudible, resonated, followed by a scraping sound and a slight tremor in the floor. Then a faint flickering light appeared ahead, coming from somewhere further along the passage. It wasn't a strong light, but enough for her eyes, now adjusting, to begin to distinguish the path. It was a golden, warm light that seemed to emanate from a fixed, distant point. The passage widened slightly, allowing Ilara to walk a little more upright. She looked back at the crevice from which she had come, now almost invisible in the gloom. There was no turning back, only forward. The golden light called to her, a silent invitation to unravel the next secret. With each step, the cough seemed to diminish, and a renewed, almost miraculous energy began to flow through her veins. It was as if hope itself was healing her, drop by drop. Finally, the passage opened into a larger space, a small circular chamber illuminated by a single torch burning in a wall sconce, casting dancing shadows. The air there was cleaner, and the sweet metallic scent was more pronounced. In the center of the chamber, on a stone pedestal, rested an object. Ilara took a few hesitant steps, her eyes fixed on what appeared to be the source of that light and peculiar aroma. It was a box, not of common wood or metal, but of a material that shimmered with a soft, ethereal glow, adorned with the same intricate symbols she had found on the tower's outer wall. The torch, though ancient, seemed to have been lit recently, or perhaps it was protected by some enchantment that kept it alive through the centuries. Ilara's heart filled with an overwhelming emotion. Lysander. He always surprised her, even beyond life. The box was not just an object, it was the materialization of her faith, proof that their love was an eternal guide. She reached out, trembling, to touch the box's surface, feeling a slight pulsation beneath her fingers. This was not just a treasure, it was the promise of a future, the hope of healing, and the key to unraveling the legacy Lysander had sworn to protect. Warm tears streamed down her wrinkled cheeks, not from sadness, but from deep gratitude and newfound strength. The journey was far from over, but Ilara knew, with every fiber of her being, that she was on the right path, guided by her husband's unwavering love. Ilara reached out, her trembling fingers brushing the ethereal surface of the box. It possessed a mild temperature, almost alive, pulsing in sync with her heart. The intricate symbols glowed with a soft light. She felt a deep connection, the certainty of Lysander's promise. Her tear-filled eyes scanned every detail, seeking to open it with no visible clasp, just the continuity of the shimmering material. With a sigh of years of pain and hope, Ilara touched one of the central symbols, a spiral unfolding into a lotus flower, a design Lysander loved. The instant her fingers pressed, the box emitted a low, musical hum, and the symbols lit up with an intense golden glow. Slowly, the top of the box lifted and swiveled aside, revealing its contents. The interior was lined with night blue silk, and upon it rested three objects. A small, cut crystal vial containing a silvery, iridescent liquid, shimmering with its own light. An ancient parchment with a faded leather ribbon and a ring of dark, polished metal, with a central stone that captured and reflected the torchlight in a way Elara had never seen before. A deep, shifting glow. Elara reached for the vial. Her fingers wrapped around the cold crystal, and a wave of warmth spread up her arm, rising to her chest. The cough silenced. A long-forgotten sense of clarity and vigor began to fill her. It was as if the air in her lungs became purer, easier to breathe. Lysander had promised healing, and here it was. A solitary tear streamed down, this time from pure joy and relief. Carefully, she opened the vial. The sweet, floral aroma she had smelled in the passage grew stronger. She brought the vial to her lips, and the silvery liquid flowed down her throat, cool and smooth, leaving a trail of comforting warmth. Almost immediately, the fog that blurred her mind dissipated, the pain in her joints subsided, and her muscles relaxed. She felt a renewed strength, an energy she hadn't experienced in years, as if every cell in her body was awakening. Her eyes, now sharper, turned to the parchment. With steady hands, she untied the ribbon and unrolled the paper. The handwriting was unmistakable. Lysander's. The words, written in faded ink, revealed the legacy. "My beloved Elara," it read, "what you hold is the key to our healing and the stolen truth. This vial contains the elixir of life. The true treasure is justice. This parchment tells the story of our lineage, of the kingdom, and of the betrayal that condemned us. The ring is the seal of our house for the right time." Elara felt her heart pulse with new intensity, not from illness, but from purpose. The weakness had vanished, replaced by mental clarity and physical strength that surprised her. She looked at the ring, feeling its weight and the energy emanating from it. The tower was not a tomb, but a sanctuary of hope, a beacon for justice. Lysander had not abandoned her. He had prepared her for a mission that would change her life and the fate of the kingdom. Elara's journey, now healed and strengthened, was about to take an unexpected turn, guided by truth and eternal love. The weakness had vanished. Elara felt every fiber of her being vibrate with an energy she hadn't recognized in decades. The fog of illness that had obscured her thoughts and weakened her body had dissipated like smoke in the wind. She was healed. Her eyes, once blurred by fever, now saw with crystalline clarity, absorbing every detail of the chamber, the flickering torch, and above all the ethereal box and the objects Lysander had left her. A wave of gratitude so intense it almost made her kneel flooded her chest. He not only loved her, he had saved her, even beyond the veil of death. With hands that now felt firm and strong, Elara held the parchment, Lysander's words echoing in her mind. The true treasure is justice. That man, her Lysander, always saw beyond the material. For him, truth and righteousness were the greatest riches. But what justice? What betrayal? Elara's mind, now sharp, began to connect the dots, the strange order to come to the tower, the hidden secrets, the healing elixir. It was all part of a larger plan, a legacy that she, his lifelong companion, was now meant to unravel and protect. She unrolled the parchment carefully, the faded ink seeming to come alive under the golden light. The first lines were an introduction to the history of her own family, the Eldoria, an ancient lineage of guardians of truth and justice in the kingdom. Lysander had detailed how, centuries ago, an Eldoria ancestor had been betrayed by an ambitious counselor who usurped power and rewrote history, condemning their family to oblivion and disgrace. The tower, once an Eldoria outpost, was the last refuge, the silent guardian of their true history. Ilara's heart tightened with the revelation of the injustice that weighed upon her ancestors. Her eyes, now tear-filled, but not from sadness, but from a righteous fury, swept over the words, absorbing the names, dates, and events that had been erased from the kingdom's official annals. Lysander had spent years, perhaps his entire life, researching, piecing together the fragments of truth. He had entrusted her not only with the healing of her body, but with the healing of an ancestral wound, the restoration of her family's honor. The task seemed monumental for an old woman, even a newly healed one, but Lysander's faith in her was an impenetrable shield against despair. Ilara took the ring from the box, feeling the dark, polished metal on her fingers. The central stone, which had once shimmered, now seemed to emit a deeper glow, almost a call. It was the seal of the Eldoria, a symbol of her lineage and the responsibility that now rested on her shoulders. She slid it onto her ring finger, feeling it fit perfectly, as if it had always belonged there. It was not just a jewel, it was a promise, an oath, a new determination ignited in her eyes. The loneliness and precariousness of the tower, once sources of anguish, now transformed into a sanctuary, a headquarters for the mission Lysander had entrusted to her. She was no longer on the brink of despair. She was on the brink of a new life, of a grand purpose. Lysander's voice, soft and firm, seemed to whisper in her ear, "Always trust," and she trusted. With the parchment in one hand and the ring on her finger, Ilara knew that the journey to rewrite the destiny of her family and the entire kingdom was just beginning, and she was ready. Ilara felt the weight of the ring on her finger, not as a burden, but as an anchor to the new reality unfolding before her. The mental clarity the elixir of life had granted her was an invaluable gift, allowing her to absorb every word of the parchment with a lucidity she hadn't experienced in a long time. She reread the passages, her eyes tracing the lines that detailed the rise of the Iron Barons, the family that centuries ago had usurped the Eldoria throne. The parchment not only narrated the betrayal, but also described the cunning with which the barons had corrupted historical records, silenced witnesses, and consolidated their power through forced alliances and empty promises. The injustice was blatant, and Ilara's righteous fury grew with each name read, each act of cruelty revealed. Lysander had been meticulous. The parchment contained descriptions of lost artifacts, of secret locations where the true history of the Eldoria was kept, and even of an ancient prophecy that spoke of a time when truth would come to light through a pure heart and an unwavering will. Ilara felt a shiver. Could she be the bearer of this prophecy? An old woman, alone in a crumbling tower, against an entire kingdom. The magnitude of the task was overwhelming, and for a brief moment, a shadow of doubt threatened to obscure her newfound determination. She closed her eyes, taking a deep breath, and Lysander's image rose in her mind, his encouraging smile, his gaze full of faith. "You are stronger than you think, my flower," he would say. She reopened her eyes, and her gaze fell upon the ring on her finger. The dark stone, which had once seemed to merely reflect light, now pulsed with a subtle internal glow, almost as if alive. Ilara turned the ring, feeling the texture of the polished metal. There was something more. With a sudden intuition, she remembered a small detail Lysander always emphasized about family rings, the importance of looking for secrets within secrets. Her thin, agile fingers, now strengthened by the elixir, fumbled along the inner edge of the ring. There was a tiny groove, almost imperceptible, that she had never noticed before. With a delicate movement, she pressed the groove. A soft click, almost inaudible, resonated in the chamber. The central stone of the ring, with a fluid and surprising movement, slid aside, revealing a tiny compartment. Inside, There was no other jewel or parchment fragment, but something far more unexpected and moving, a small dried seed of a vibrant emerald green hue and a strand of silver hair, tied with a silk ribbon. Alongside them, a minuscule inscription, almost invisible to the naked eye, engraved on the inside of the compartment, "For the future, with love and hope. Find her." Ilara felt a shock. A seed, a strand of hair, and the inscription, "Find her." The seed, she recognized, was from a rare plant, the dawn flower, which, according to legends, bloomed only in blessed soil and had healing and protective properties. Lysander had always sought it, but never found it, and the strand of hair, it was a child's. It wasn't hers nor Lysander's. Her eyes widened, and the parchment slipped from her hands, falling softly onto the stone floor. That was the turning point, the revelation that changed everything. Lysander wasn't just asking her to restore justice for the past. He was connecting her to a future, to a life. Find her. That simple word reverberated in her mind, filling her with a new urgency, a purpose that transcended mere vengeance. It wasn't about what had been lost, but about what could be saved. There was a child, a descendant of the Eldoria, perhaps the last hope for her family's legacy, living somewhere, perhaps in danger. Lysander hadn't abandoned her to loneliness. He had entrusted her with the most precious of missions, to protect an innocent life, a vital link to the future. The tower, once a refuge of secrets, now became a starting point for a quest that would redefine the meaning of family, altruism, and justice. Ilara squeezed the ring in her hand, the seed and the strand of hair seeming to pulse with a life of their own. She was not alone. She was the guardian of a new hope. Ilara squeezed the ring in her hand, the seed and the strand of hair seeming to pulse with a life of their own. She was not alone. She was the guardian of a new hope. The revelation of the child, an unexpected link to her lineage's future, reverberated in her chest, transforming grief into a burning purpose. Lysander, always ahead, had planted this seed of hope, not just for her healing, but for the restoration of something much greater. Her eyes, now clear and filled with a determination she hadn't felt in a long time, fell again on the fallen parchment. She picked it up carefully, her hands steady, and unrolled it once more, searching for any clue, any word that might illuminate the mystery of that child. Lysander's handwriting, once a painful memory, was now a guide. She reread the passages about the dawn flower, the mythical plant whose seeds were guarded by the Eldoria. The parchment described that the dawn flower bloomed only in blessed soil, near sources of vital energy, and that its leaves, when macerated, could reveal the location of pure descendants of the lineage. Lysander had spent years searching for this flower, believing it would be the key to unraveling his family's secrets. Now, Ilara had the seed, and the inscription "Find her" gained a new and profound meaning. The child, the last known descendant, was linked to the dawnflower. An overwhelming wave of emotion swept through Ilara. The loneliness that had consumed her for so long dissipated, replaced by a protective love for that unknown life. Lysander had not left her only with the task of righting an ancient injustice, but with the responsibility of protecting a new life, of nurturing a future. It was an act of supreme altruism, a legacy of hope that transcended death itself. Ilara felt warm tears stream down, but they were tears of gratitude and renewed love, not of pain. The magnitude of the mission, however, could not be ignored. The kingdom was vast, and the Iron Barons had meticulously erased any trace of the Eldoria. How would an old woman, even a healed and strengthened one, find a lost child amid centuries of lies and oblivion? The obstacle was social and logistical, but also deeply internal. Doubt, a ghost from the past, tried to creep into her mind, but the image of Lysander's smile, the trust in his eyes, propelled her forward. She was not alone. He had provided the tools, the healing, and now the motivation. Elara looked at the silver strand of hair, so fine and delicate, tied with the silk ribbon. It was a thread of hope, a tangible connection to the child. The emerald green seed in her palm seemed to radiate a gentle energy. She needed to find the blessed spot to plant the dawnflower. The parchment mentioned a secret garden within the Eldoria lands, a place that, according to legend, had never been desecrated. But where would this garden be? The tower was an outpost, not the heart of the ancient domain. Her eyes swept the chamber, searching for more clues. The torch flickered, casting dancing shadows that seemed to whisper ancient secrets. Elara felt a pang of urgency. Every moment was precious. The child could be in danger, living a life of deprivation, unaware of their true heritage. Justice for the past and hope for the future were intrinsically linked. With a determined sigh, Elara carefully placed the seed, the strand of hair, and the parchment back into the ethereal box, which closed with the same soft hum. She slid the ring back onto her finger, feeling the weight of responsibility, but also the strength it bestowed upon her. The tower, once a refuge for her pain and loneliness, was now a headquarters, a starting point for a journey that seemed impossible, but which she knew she must undertake with all her soul. The first task would be to decipher the clues about the secret garden. Lysander, in his infinite wisdom, had certainly left more indications etched into the tower walls or on the objects themselves. She could not fail. The life of that child and the destiny of her family and the kingdom depended on her. Elara stood up, her posture erect and determined, her eyes fixed on the opening of the dark passage. The journey to find the Eldoria descendant and restore justice was just beginning, and she was ready to face every challenge with the courage and unwavering faith her beloved Lysander had instilled in her heart. Elara turned, her eyes sweeping the circular chamber with new intensity. The flickering torch, which had once seemed a solitary point of light in the darkness, now illuminated a stage for her mission. Lysander, ever so ingenious, would not have left her with such a vital task without further guides. She knew, with the certainty that only true love can give, that he had hidden more clues, waiting for her to be ready to find them. Her fingers brushed the cold stone wall, feeling every irregularity, every recess. The parchment mentioned the secret garden within the Eldoria lands, a place that, according to legend, had never been desecrated, but the tower was merely an outpost. How would she find a garden in a kingdom so vast and under the dominion of an enemy who had erased their history? The question echoed in her mind, but not with despair, rather with a keen curiosity. She began to inspect the chamber methodically, her eyes alert for any symbol, any mark that might have gone unnoticed before. The stone of the pedestal where the ethereal box rested seemed ordinary, but Elara knelt, running her hand along its base. There was a slight unevenness, almost invisible. She pressed, and nothing happened. Frustration, a long-forgotten feeling, threatened to surface, but she pushed it away. Lysander always said that the deepest secrets required patience and an eye that saw beyond the obvious. Elara stood up, and her eyes fixed on the wall opposite the passage entrance. There, hidden beneath a layer of soot and time, she noticed a set of carvings. They were not the intricate symbols of the box, but something more rudimentary, almost a stylized map. It was a representation of the tower, and from it a dashed line extended outwards, ending in a small circle with a dot in the center. Beside the circle, a small engraved flower. Elara's heart leaped. It was it, the secret garden. The dashed line was not straight, but meandered, indicating a winding path. Below the map, A series of words in handwriting she recognized as Lysander's, but different from the main parchment, as if it were a personal note. Where the water sings and the stone weeps, there the dawn flower awaits. Ilara frowned, trying to decipher the riddle. Where the water sings could be a spring, a river. And the stone weeps? Perhaps a waterfall or a peculiar rock formation. She felt a thrill of excitement. Lysander had not only guided her to healing, but to a treasure hunt that promised her family's future. That man, even in his absence, continued to surprise her with his intelligence and unwavering love. The urgency to find the child intensified. She imagined the child's face, their eyes, their smile. Would it be a girl, as she herself had once been? Or a boy, with Lysander's bravery? The idea of protecting this life, of being the bridge between past and future, filled her with an energy that transcended mere physical strength. Ilara touched the carved map, feeling the roughness of the stone beneath her fingers. She needed a plan. The map was simple, but it indicated a general direction. She would need to leave the tower, venture into the outside world, a world that had become strange and dangerous to her. The social obstacle of her age and the precariousness of her situation, though alleviated by the healing, were still real, but the image of the dawnflower seed and the silver strand of hair in her mind were more powerful than any fear. With a determined sigh and her heart full of purpose, Ilara turned away from the wall. The torch continued to burn, a beacon of hope. She needed to prepare. The journey would be long and uncertain, but she was no longer alone. Lysander's legacy, the hope of a new life, and the promise of justice were her companions. She looked at the dark passage that would lead her back to the main body of the tower. It was time to act. Ilara stepped away from the carved wall, the map and the riddle etched into her mind with divine clarity. Her heart, once fragile from illness, now pulsed with unwavering strength, driven by a purpose that transcended her existence. Lysander, her beloved, had orchestrated everything with a wisdom that only true love forges. She was not just healed, she was reborn, guardian of a legacy and a life she did not yet know. The urgency to find the child, to plant the dawnflower seed and unravel the mystery of the secret garden, burned in her chest like a sacred flame, illuminating every fiber of her soul. Where the water sings and the stone weeps, there the dawnflower awaits, she murmured, Lysander's words echoing in her voice, now strong and clear. He had always taught her to look beyond the obvious, to find poetry in nature and secrets between the lines. The tower, once a labyrinth of loneliness and despair, now revealed itself as a starting point, a beacon. But how to leave? The world outside was vast and hostile, dominated by the Iron Barons who had erased her family's history. She was an old woman, even strengthened, and the idea of venturing out alone seemed madness, except to her, who carried Lysander's unwavering faith. Her eyes swept the chamber, shrewdly seeking resources. Lysander, in his foresight, had left the ethereal box with the elixir and the parchment. But what about the journey? She would need provisions, a detailed map, perhaps a disguise to blend in and avoid scrutiny. The tower, though in ruins, still held vestiges of its past. There was a small pantry, superficially explored, and dusty chests on the upper floors with useful items. Every step would be calculated, every movement a silent prayer to Lysander. A promise that she would not fail. The hope of a child and the justice of a lineage depended on her. Where the water sings. Ilara closed her eyes, trying to evoke memories of Lysander, of his stories about the Eldoria lands. He spoke of crystal-clear streams, of bubbling springs that gushed from the earth. And the stone weeps, a majestic waterfall. or a grotto where water trickled over rocks, forming drops that looked like petrified tears. The image of a small waterfall he had described near an old abandoned windmill came to her mind with clarity. A place that, according to him, had a peculiar, almost magical energy. Could this be the spot? The possibility ignited a spark of intense hope. With a determined sigh, Ilara headed for the secret passage, not to return, but to ascend. She knew that the upper floors of the tower, though more damaged and exposed, might contain what she needed. There was a small, almost hidden, spiral stone staircase that led to a level above the main chamber. Her steps were firm, without the hesitation of illness or age. Each step was a step towards the future, an act of unwavering love and faith. She needed a sturdy backpack, a water canteen, something to protect herself from the night's cold and the harsh sun. The image of the emerald green seed and the silver strand of hair, carefully kept in the ethereal box, was her most potent fuel. She imagined the child, perhaps a girl with Lysander's curious and gentle eyes, or a boy with his bravery and captivating smile. Protecting this life was now her purpose, a silent oath to the man who loved her beyond death. The loneliness that had consumed her had transformed into a constant companionship. Lysander's presence in her heart and the promise of a future she would help shape. The journey would be arduous, full of dangers and uncertainties, but she was ready to face each one. Ilara ascended the spiral stone staircase, each step a promise, not a burden. Her muscles, strengthened by the elixir, responded with surprising agility. The darkness of the staircase, punctuated by slivers of light, did not intimidate her, but seemed like a tunnel to a future that Lysander, her beloved and wise husband, had meticulously paved. She thought of him, of his smile, of his unwavering faith, feeling a strength that transcended the physical. The upper floors of the tower, more ruined, revealed the starry sky, and the wind whistled, carrying the scent of ancient stone and damp earth. Dust and rubble covered the floor, but Ilara, with her new vitality, swept the surroundings, seeking utility. She knew that Lysander, ever provident, would not have sent her on such a vital mission without the necessary tools. In a corner, half buried by debris, Ilara spotted a sturdy wooden chest, though dusty. With effort, she pushed aside the stones and opened the creaking lid. Inside, to her surprise and relief, were carefully packed provisions. A leather canteen, a thick dark wool cloak, a sturdy travel bag, and, to her greatest joy, a small parchment map rolled with silk thread. Ilara unrolled the map with hands trembling with emotion. It wasn't a detailed map, but a sketch of the lands near the tower, with rivers, hills, and the old windmill Lysander had so often mentioned. Near the windmill, a flower symbol identical to the carving on the wall, and a small waterfall. "Where the water sings and the stone weeps," she murmured, Lysander's riddle unraveling. It was the secret garden. Gratitude and admiration for Lysander flooded her. He had thought of everything, anticipating every need. His love, even after death, was a constant guide. Ilara felt a lump in her throat, tears of pure emotion and connection. She was not alone. Lysander was with her in every step, in every heartbeat. She put the map, canteen, and cloak into the bag. In the chest, a pouch with dried herbs and hardtack, enough provisions for the first few days. Lysander had always been practical. The image of the boy, the Eldoria descendant, shone in her mind. His curious eyes, his innocent smile. Protecting this life, ensuring her family's legacy, was now the purpose of her existence. The responsibility was immense, but Lysander's faith in her was a shield. She was no longer a lonely old woman. She was a guardian, a link between past and future. With the bag adjusted, Ilara descended the staircase, the torch from the secret chamber calling to her. The tower, once a refuge for her pain, was now a starting point, a portal to a new life. She felt the Eldoria ring, the dawnflower seed, and the boy's strand of hair pulsing in her chest, a promise of tomorrow. The dawn of justice and hope was about to break, and Elara was ready to be its herald, guided by Lysander's eternal love. With a final glance at the chamber that held so many secrets and Lysander's living memory, Elara passed through the dark passage, emerging into the main body of the tower. The night air, fresh and biting, enveloped her, bringing with it the scent of damp earth and the distant whisper of wind in the trees. Stars twinkled in the sky, a carpet of diamonds over the dark veil of the world. She adjusted the wool cloak on her shoulders, feeling the weight of the travel bag, which now contained not only provisions, but the hope of a kingdom. Her steps were cautious as she descended the tower's outer stairs, but firm, without the hesitation that illness had imposed on her for so long. Each step was an overcoming, a farewell to a past of pain, and a nod to an uncertain, yet promising, future. As she touched the soft, dew-covered ground, Elara took a deep breath. The world outside was vast and unknown, a labyrinth of dense forests, winding rivers, and hills that rose like sleeping giants. Lysander's map, kept with reverence, was her only guide. She unrolled it under the pale moonlight, tracing with her finger the lines that led from the tower's outpost to the old windmill, and from there to the waterfall and the secret garden. The journey would not be easy. The Iron Barons had swept the Eldoria from memory, and every shadow could hide a danger, every encounter a threat. But fear was a thin veil that tore before the image of the boy, the emerald green seed, and the legacy Lysander had entrusted to her. She walked through the night, the landscape slowly unfolding beneath the starry mantle. The forest, once a place of refuge, now seemed impenetrable, its twisted branches forming ghostly silhouettes. Elara felt weariness begin to weigh on her, but the thought of Lysander, of his unwavering faith, was a balm for her soul. She remembered his stories about nature's resilience, about how the deepest roots always found a way, even through the hardest stone. That was her resilience, her faith. At dawn, the sun painted the sky with shades of pink and gold, revealing a crystal-clear stream that wound through a valley. "Where the water sings," Elara murmured, recognizing the first part of the riddle. She knelt, washed her face, and filled her canteen, feeling the icy water invigorate her spirit. The map indicated that she should follow the stream, which would lead her towards the eastern hills. With each step, the landscape grew wilder, the trees older, the moss-covered stones more imposing. She spotted the first signs of the old windmill, its blades broken and silent, a monument to forgotten time. In the center of the clearing, enveloped by the waterfall's mist, Elara saw a small circle of earth, strangely free of vegetation, as if waiting for something. It was the secret garden. Her eyes filled with tears of gratitude and reverence for Lysander, who had guided her there with such precision and love. She knelt, took the emerald green seed from the ring and held it in her palm, feeling it pulse with a life of its own, an ancestral energy that seemed to vibrate in sync with her own heart. This was the climax of her journey, the moment when past and future met in a sacred bond. Justice for the Eldoria, healing for her kingdom, and hope for the boy, all depended on that small act of faith. With a deep sigh, and her heart overflowing with love and purpose, Elara prepared the soil, ready to plant the dawnflower seed, the promise of a new dawn for her family and for all. Elara knelt in the circle of earth, her heart beating in unison with the ancestral energy emanating from the spot. Her hands, once trembling from illness, were now firm and full of purpose. With her fingertips, she opened a small hole in the soft, damp soil, a cradle for the life about to bloom. Carefully, she placed the emerald green seed, so tiny and yet so powerful, into the earth. She covered it gently, as if cradling a baby, and poured a few drops of water from her canteen, a silent blessing. She closed her eyes, a prayer of gratitude and hope blossoming on her lips. "Lysander, my love," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "May your faith and love guide this new life." As she opened her eyes, a sight that defied logic and filled her soul with wonder unfolded before her. The earth in the circle began to glow with a soft greenish light. In a matter of seconds, no, in the blink of an eye, a sprout emerged, growing rapidly, its leaves unfolding at a magical pace. Ilara watched, awestruck, as the stem elongated, adorned with buds that opened into delicate petals, pearly white with golden edges. It was the dawnflower, more beautiful and vibrant than any legend could describe. It radiated a sweet, ethereal fragrance that seemed to purify the air and soothe her soul. But the miracle didn't stop there. In the center of the flower, where pollen should have been, a small gem, identical to the seed but now polished and shining, began to pulse with its own light. It wasn't just a gem, it was a memory crystal, a repository of Eldoria wisdom. Ilara reached out, and the flower gently inclined as if inviting her. Upon touching the crystal, a torrent of images and sensations flooded her mind, visions of a prosperous kingdom, of a just and wise people, of ancient rituals, and of the true history of the Iron Barons, who had usurped power through lies and betrayal. She saw the complete map of the kingdom, with the hiding places of the Eldoria descendants, protected by loyal families, and most importantly, the location of the boy, the last heir, living in a hidden village in the northern mountains, under the protection of an old weaver who was, in truth, a guardian of the lineage. The crystal also revealed the true nature of the treasure, not gold or jewels, but ancestral knowledge and the ability to awaken the dormant magic of the Eldoria, a magic of healing and harmony that could restore the kingdom's balance. The Dawnflower, in its essence, was a beacon, a living link to the vital energy of the earth and to the Eldoria lineage. It would not only heal her body, which the elixir had already done, but would protect her mind and spirit, giving her the clarity and strength to face future challenges. The loneliness that had accompanied her for so long completely dissolved, replaced by a feeling of deep connection. Lysander was there, in every petal of the flower, in every image of the crystal, in every beat of her heart. He had planned everything, not so she would feel abandoned, but so she would find her true purpose. Justice for the Eldoria would not just be the restoration of a throne, but the rediscovery of a way of life, a legacy of altruism and wisdom that would benefit everyone. Ilara felt the silver strand of hair, which she had tied around the ring, vibrate softly. The connection with the boy was now undeniable, palpable. She knew where to find him, knew how to protect him, and, most importantly, knew she was not alone on this journey. The Dawnflower, majestic and resplendent, was living proof that hope never dies, and that love, even beyond life, can rewrite the destiny of an entire kingdom. She stood up, her posture erect, her eyes fixed on the flower, which now radiated a soft, constant light, a beacon for the future. The resolution of her internal and external conflicts was there, before her, blossoming in all its glory. The journey to find the boy and restore justice was about to begin, but now Ilara had all the answers, and above all, the unwavering faith Lysander had planted in her heart. Ilara stood up, her posture erect, her eyes fixed on the Dawnflower, which now radiated a soft, constant light, a beacon for the future. The resolution of her internal and external conflicts was there, before her, blossoming in all its glory. The journey to find the boy and restore justice was about to begin. But now Ilara had all the answers, and above all, the unwavering faith Lysander had planted in her heart. The loneliness had dissipated like morning mist, replaced by a warm certainty. Lysander was with her, not as a distant memory, but as a living force guiding every step. With a final reverent glance at the flower, which seemed to nod in approval, Ilara stored the essence of the memory crystal in her heart, a vivid map and a clear plan. The dawn flower, in its majesty, would remain there, a sanctuary of hope and a link to the earth's magic, awaiting the day when the kingdom could once again honor its beauty. She adjusted the travel bag on her shoulders, feeling the weight of the provisions and the lightness of her spirit. The path to the north, to the hidden village in the mountains, was long, but with each step, Ilara felt the dawn flower's energy pulsing in her veins, a vitality that transcended her age, a shield against weariness and fear. The journey was a pilgrimage of self-discovery and admiration for Lysander's wisdom. She crossed rushing rivers, climbed steep hills, and hid in dark forests, always guided by the crystal's visions. Every social obstacle, the distrust of solitary travelers, the precariousness of an old woman in hostile lands, was overcome by the clarity of her purpose and the cunning Lysander had taught her. Finally, after days of journey, Ilara spotted the village, nestled among snowy peaks, a secret refuge, invisible to the eyes of the Iron Barons. Upon entering the village, Ilara was greeted by an old weaver whose deep, wise eyes seemed to recognize her even before she uttered a word. She was the Guardian, and in her gaze, Ilara saw the same unwavering faith Lysander possessed. Without hesitation, the weaver led her to a small hut where a boy with bright, curious eyes played with a piece of wood. His hair, a soft silver, was identical to the strand Ilara kept. Upon seeing Ilara, the boy paused, an innocent smile spreading across his face. Ilara felt an immediate connection, a family bond that embraced her with tenderness. With her voice choked with emotion, Ilara told the story, revealing the Eldoria ring and the silver strand of hair. The weaver, with tears in her eyes, confirmed the boy's lineage. There were no doubts, only the certainty that destiny was unfolding. From that day on, the weaver's hut became the center of a silent yet powerful movement. Ilara, with the crystal's knowledge and the Guardian's wisdom, began to contact the loyal families, awakening the dormant magic of the Eldoria, a magic of healing, harmony, and truth. There was no need for swords or bloody battles. Justice would be restored through revealed truth and the unity of a people who yearned for a future of peace. Ilara, once an ailing and lonely widow, was now a matriarch, a mentor to the young heir, a beacon of hope. She saw the kingdom transforming, the lies of the Iron Barons crumbling before the light of truth. The boy, growing under her and the weaver's tutelage, learned not only about his legacy, but about altruism, justice, and connection to the earth. The dawn flower in its secret garden bloomed as an eternal symbol that love, faith, and hope can rewrite destiny, transforming ruin into a new dawn, a kingdom where the harmony and wisdom of the Eldoria would finally prevail. Ilara, with a full heart, knew that Lysander would be proud, and that his love had indeed healed not just one woman, but an entire kingdom. Ilara, with a full heart, knew that Lysander would be proud, and that his love had indeed healed not just one woman, but an entire kingdom. The years that followed that reunion in the hidden village witnessed the most beautiful and profound transformation. The weaver's hut, once a secret refuge, blossomed as the pulsating heart of a new era. From there, the truth about the Iron Barons spread like seeds on the wind, not with the fury of a storm, but with the gentleness of a breeze that reveals what was hidden. The boy, whose name Ilara finally revealed to be Kale, grew under the loving and wise tutelage of Ilara and the Guardian. His eyes, once merely curious, now shone with the intelligence and compassion that were the mark of the Eldoria. Elara spent hours telling him the stories of her lineage, the teachings of the memory crystal, the importance of harmony with nature, and justice for all. Kyle absorbed every word, every gesture, with a seriousness that transcended his young age. He was not just an heir, he was the personification of hope, a young sprout of the Dawnflower. The loyal families, once scattered and fearful, began to gather, not in secret but openly, inspired by Elara's courage and Kale's purity. The dormant magic of the Eldoria, a magic of healing and balance, manifested in small acts of kindness, in just decisions, in the revitalization of forgotten lands, and in the building of bridges between communities. The Iron Barons, confronted not with armies, but with undeniable truth and the unity of a people, saw their power crumble. Their lies, once pillars of their authority, disintegrated under the weight of revelation, and they were stripped of their lands and titles, not by violence, but by the collective will of a kingdom finally awakening. Elara, her hair now whiter, but with the vitality of a woman in her prime, walked through the restored kingdom, seeing the fruits of her journey. The crumbling tower, her first refuge and starting point, was carefully restored, becoming a symbol of resilience and a museum of memories where the history of the Eldoria was told with pride. The secret garden, with the Dawnflower blooming eternally, became a place of pilgrimage, a living reminder of the power of faith and love. Kale, now a young man, took his rightful place, not as a king on a throne of power, but as a guardian of the peace and wisdom of the Eldoria. He governed with Lysander's gentleness and Elara's firmness, always seeking justice and the well-being of his people. Elara, by his side, was the silent counselor, the matriarch who saw in Kale the fulfilled promise, the restored lineage, the secure future. In her final years, Elara frequently visited the secret garden. She sat near the Dawnflower, feeling its pulsating energy, the sweet fragrance that enveloped her like an embrace. There, she spoke with Lysander, not with the pain of grief, but with the joy of a love that transcended death and became the driving force of a new era. She knew that every smile from Kyle, every act of justice in the kingdom, every flower that bloomed was an echo of Lysander's love, proof that unwavering faith can, indeed, rewrite destiny. Elara's life, which began in despair and loneliness, culminated in a profound legacy of hope and connection, an eternal testament that even in the darkest ruins, true love always finds a way to flourish and heal.